Eli Harrell is about to come on and blow your freaking mind, talking about impact, talking about changing the world, the future, leveraging personal growth for life and business success. Before we dive into that, I'm talking to you because you're becoming your greatest possible self. Did you know? Yeah, every day you show up and you're absolutely doing your best. So I acknowledge you, number one. Give yourself a little pat on the back or a big pat on the back, whatever you prefer. And however I can support you in moving forward even more and getting your message out, changing the world, being your GPS, let's talk. Whether it's coming on the 12-hour marathon as a guest, would love to see how we can support you with that. Whether it's launching your own podcast and getting your own message out into the world, or if it's attending our Bali Flow and Fire retreat coming up here in November, a really intimate retreat for influencers and people who want to change the world, dive into their purpose, get even more aligned. It's going to be great, great stuff. Let's talk. You can find me on Facebook, facebook.com/th3 Burns, Instagram at I am Millionaire Chris, as well as email chris@beyourgps.com. Looking forward to talking to you. Next up is the iTunes review of the week, and this week, let's see who it's by. It is by Hannah1125. Hannah1125 says, always a nugget. Chris shows up with such authentic interest in the guest and the audience. Every single show has a golden nugget that I can start implementing in my life right away. It feels like Chris really believes we can all become our greatest self, and consistently shows us how. If this isn't in your ear, you are missing out on loads of inspiration, action, and your own greatness. Hannah, thank you so much for sharing that. And if you're out there listening right now and you want to get a chance to get shouted out on a future marathon, go to beyourgps.com/iTunes or search Greatest Possible Self on the iTunes or Apple Podcast store, and then subscribe while you're there, definitely, and leave us a review. Let us know what you love, what you want to see more of on the podcast. We love that feedback, and thank you for being on the journey with us. We're going to dive in and create even more greatness together. I'm going to introduce Eli in just a second here. Before that, grab a piece of paper, grab a pen, be ready to take notes. This is going to be gold, and it could be a conversation that opens up your field of possibilities. What's possible? Like the future, who you are, your greatest possible self. I have a feeling like we're going to go super deep into how the world is evolving, and it's going to be a really, really great conversation. So stay all the way through till the end, because one of these ideas has the power to change everything for you. So let's introduce Eli. We'll bring him on. Eli is a lifelong entrepreneur who has founded and led multi-million-dollar companies in industries from construction to cybersecurity. From West Coast to East Coast, Japan to the Philippines, where he has lived for 5 years now, he has led both bootstrapped and VC-funded startups, advised and consulted for founders in many, many sectors. But his passion, after all of that, is helping people grow themselves. He believes that the human experience is best lived when we focus our energy on understanding and mastering, I added that, ourselves and how we work, and when we take extreme ownership of growing ourselves endlessly, and that success is more about who we are becoming than all the doing and having we think so much about. So he's really all about turning things upside down and really showing you the truth, showing you your greatest possible self. And we're blessed to have him here with us today. Eli, are you ready to rock the house, my man?
Of course. How you doing, Chris?
Amazing, man. Just absolutely
Good.
Blessed. We're on hour 9 out of 12 on the 12-hour marathon, having a blast, man. So thank you for being here and, just really bringing your love for people, love for personal growth and development and business growth. It's going to be a lot of fun. Let's dive into the theme of today, which is the power of authority. Eli, what does that mean to you, the power of authority?
Power of authority. Well, first of all, it's exciting for me to have your energy this morning because it's 8 a.m. Great way to wake up.
We did 6 a.m. last time, man. Come on, this is
all right.
Easy.
No, I've been awake since 5:30, but still, it's a nice energy for the morning. Authority. Authority is a super interesting thing for me because I think we don't realize how many parts of our lives, how many decisions we make probably every day are influenced by authority that we don't realize that we've assigned. There's a lot of authority in relationships, in our family, people that we look up to. We don't even realize why we look up to them. Sometimes fear of other people's opinions has a lot of authority kind of tied into it. So it's a very broad topic. But I was just listening to the guest you just had on before, Lexia.
Yeah, Lexia.
And she used the word a lot. So I didn't realize that was the theme of the day, though. Now I understand. Got it. So, yeah, authority. I guess the one thing I would say that I've learned in my life is that so much of the authority that we believe is rigid and just sort of in our lives is really not. And when we start to kind of unpack and deconstruct the authority that we think is in our lives, we really have so much more freedom than we think. And a lot of the decisions and things I've done in my life that have led to experiences that other people might think are crazy, probably came from a place of rebellion, you might call it at first, where I said, no, that's not really authority. And I decided to do, the opposite or do something outside of that. So I would say top level, I would say authority is probably mostly an illusion that we assign in our own minds, but we don't always realize we're doing that.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. And I think I hear a lot of external authority that is imposed on us, society, leaders, things like that, leaders, like the authority imposed on us. And then there's also like the internal authority, the internal compass, the internal guidance, which I know you're big in, like really tapping into ourselves and growing ourselves. So to be able to discover our own authority. I think I even went through that phase of rebellion, saying, screw authority. I'm going to be wild and free. I'm going to do what I want when I want. And like, I don't need anything or anyone. And then like I had to learn, I got the opportunity to learn, well, structure's good. Just when I choose it, when I welcome it, it serves me and it's a benefit and it helps me grow into my greatest possible self. So it's a fun dance, man.
Absolutely is. It's a fascinating word. I think I'll make a note to really contemplate this word more because it ties into a lot of things like our need for autonomy and the fact that I think a lot of us go through life not prioritizing ourselves enough. And then we end up not really becoming our best selves and not being able to help other people as well as we could have if we had really had the hierarchy right. What I said about all the authorities that people live their lives kind of assuming are really, solid. The key is to recognize that you get to choose how much, how solid those are. And then the better choice, in my opinion, I agree with you, is gradually over time throughout our lives, kind of building that personal authority and realizing like every belief, every perspective is really your choice. And if you haven't yet made it, once you start making those choices yourselves, then you do start finding your own authority. I agree with that.
Gold, Eli. So tell our audience a little bit more about who you are, what you stand for, and what your clients come to you for, man.
Sure. So a bit of an unusual background. I was born in the U.S. I was born on the West Coast, but grew up in Atlanta, Georgia. Kind of an unusual childhood, I think, compared to most people, because I was homeschooled. So I didn't really go through the kind of linear educational system where I was being groomed or heading toward getting a job with a diploma. So I don't even have a diploma, honestly. And it has never mattered. I don't really care. So my parents were entrepreneurs and I grew up working in their business. So I kind of learned a lot of figure it out mindset, and then also saw a lot of things maybe that I learned some mistakes that I saw them making, and kind of later on realized, looking back, ways to get better at it. So I've just been an entrepreneur my whole life. Had companies in the construction industry in Atlanta for about 10 years. And once I sold my equity in those companies, I had this opportunity presented to me to come to Asia for a month. I said yes. Saw an economy here in the Philippines that really felt alive. And I felt like I could make a difference more easily with more people here. And I wanted my kids to get an experience outside the country as well. So we said, all right, let's just go live there for a year. Nobody really paid me to do it. I just said, we can, so let's do it. And so I've been here 5.5 years, and I ended up, over those 5.5 years, I've worked in a number of different fields, mostly coaching and consulting. I have a lot of background in sales and marketing, but really all across business. I love every piece of business. And so I do some consulting here and there. I love coaching founders. I love supporting startup founders and kind of helping them, not just in the business side of things, but also personal development. And my business partner and I, his name is Garrick, we're building actually a very big long-term vision where we want to be able to hire people from the corporate world who we see a lot of potential in. They want to be entrepreneurs. We want to be able to put them into a company where we can grow them into founders, basically, and support them in starting companies that solve problems. Our biggest, kind of top level down perspective on business is that we think business is the best tool we have on this planet as humans to solve problems.
Yeah.
And to align people and get their energy and going in the same direction. So that's what we're in it for. Right now, over the next 2 years, our big focus is building out our software development company. Mm-hmm. So we actually do outsourced software. We become the software arm for startups, and even we do a lot of enterprise software solutions. And that's kind of a part of our big picture plan. So we're not just in the outsourcing business for arbitrage, but we're actually building a culture within our company that we're doing. So that's what I do.
That's rad, man. I love it. So you really support is companies in creating the infrastructure, the software infrastructure, so that they can grow their companies. There's a specific sector or type of businesses or a specific function that the software usually performs?
We haven't really focused in or become specialized in one niche market yet. Our clients range from tech startups. We're working. We've got one of the biggest gyms in Australia that we're doing a lot of work for like a challenge app. So we do mobile apps, we do heavy websites, but we also do enterprise business process integrations and workflow software. So we love business. We know business pretty well, and we're not just tech guys. So we love to go in and understand the business and kind of what it's trying to achieve, who the people are. And for us, it's pretty important to work with people who have a somewhat similar worldview, or that we just kind of believe in their mission, because we get pretty involved with them. We don't see ourselves as just a contractor. We see ourselves as kind of a partner for the long run.
Yeah. So when did the commitment to impacting the world and surrounding yourself with people with a similar worldview, personal growth, business growth, like willing to work on themselves, when did that become a priority for you along your journey?
That's an awesome question. I would say it's pretty gradual that's happened. I realized after the decade of my 20s where I was building those companies in the US and made so many mistakes. And if any of my ex-partners listen to this, they're going to be remembering the same time period as probably a lot of learning. We had some success on paper, but didn't know what I was doing in a lot of ways, especially was not asking myself at all who I was becoming and who I wanted to become. So I wasn't really looking internally at all. I was just doing stuff, right? Wow. And it's the American dream. And I built the American dream on paper, but so I would say over the last 10 years, I've really started, it's been this gradual progression of realizing that a fulfilling life is much more achievable and sustainable when you're focused on that question, like who are you becoming, and who am I right this second, and can I enjoy this moment, every moment, because it's the only one we ever get to live, right? Yeah. And then also, who do I want to become, and am I working in that direction? So I would say that's been pretty gradual, but over the last 4 years is when I've started realizing, maybe after getting a little better at living, just the human experience, I realized a lot of things I knew about myself now that I wanted to help other people. So one of my core ambitions is to help as many other people as possible to get onto a better path of self-teaching, like taking more ownership of learning, because we have access to all knowledge. We can learn from guys like you. I mean, there's so many people we can learn from, which is probably why the podcast revolution is happening, right? We realize there's all these amazing people, and we can choose which ones we want to learn from. Yeah. So impact, business, I spent a long time focusing on business for the obvious reasons. You
money.
Want freedom, you want money, you want all those things, right? And then you start attaching dreams to those things, and the dreams that I started attaching to why I was doing it were travel and experiences and things, which I definitely want. I certainly want those things for my kids, but now I realize, like, it's much more rewarding to see. It's just more rewarding to address this, come into business with the perspective of like, we can solve problems with this. And in the meantime, I'll have everything I need. I'll have more than and I want a lot of money so I can do more things like that. I want to be able to invest in companies. I want to start companies. I want to help grow more people.
Yeah.
But yeah, how much money do I personally need? There's a limit to that, right?
Yeah. That's good.
I'm not sure if that's the most concise answer, but
it's great. It's all perfect. It's all coming out perfect. I wanted to talk about like the commitment to impact, because we talked about personal growth, and now you have this, and especially in our pre-interview call, like a commitment to impacting people. And I know the theme of today is like impact requires energy. So can you tell us a little bit about what that means to you, Eli?
Sure. On impact, I think this is a word it's getting used a lot in business, and I'm glad it is.
Yeah.
But I think it's hard for us perspective-wise to figure out how do we as individuals and being an entrepreneur, how do you measure that impact? And you get into VCs that invest only in social enterprises, like it gets really tricky to start measuring impact from an objective perspective. So I think it has to be, you have to sort of accept that it's a bit of a subjective, personal. You should describe, like, if you say that you care about impact, then what are you okay with, and what makes you happy? Honestly, like, it's probably most rewarding and recharging to be connected with people that you are impacting. So even if it's a small number of people, if you see individuals grow, you see individuals doing things they wouldn't have otherwise done, believing themselves more than they would have otherwise, that for me is quite rewarding already. So it doesn't necessarily have to be scale for other people to look on and say, wow, you helped that many people, right? But when it comes to energy, over the past 2 or 3 years, I've really been focusing on energy management for myself, and like changing a lot of habits and building a lot of new habits when it comes to physical, mental, emotional, spiritual energy, and I've gotten so much better at those things. I would love to help other people do the same thing, or at least lead them to some resources that helped me a lot. But I'll start with something even more base than that, more core, which is worldview. I discovered this quote by Einstein about 2.5 years ago. I think I shared it with you before. Einstein said that the most important decision a person can ever make is whether to believe that the universe is either friendly or hostile. And objectively, it's both. And there's no way you could prove your case if you thought that it was more one or more the other. Like, you'll never win that argument. But choice, that's the key. The key in that, first of all, like, why, ask yourself, why did Einstein say that's the most important choice we could ever make? And I think it really matters, because if, first of all, I guess for the reason that's important, going back to impact, if we if we kind of walk around every day just operating with this core belief that the world is kind of screwed and not really much we can do about that, right? Then how would you be able to sustain energy toward making any kind of difference?
No.
I don't think you can. I think you can say you want to, but over time there's a massive misalignment in energy. So I think to start with, when I'm saying that impact requires energy, and then like in our software company, this is what we love, working with companies that we think are making an impact, especially in an area that we think is important. Of course, we're not the judges, but that's why we do what we do. So for me, that choice is all about the data you put in. Because if you watch the evening news every day, and that's the data you're putting in, that's the slice of the world that you're just putting into your brain, I'm pretty sure over time, I'll put some money on the fact that you'll eventually get to the point where you're like, man, this world sucks.
Yeah. Well, what I'm hearing, what's coming to my mind is impact requires energy. Okay, if I'm choosing to see the world and believe that the world is hostile, my energy is not going to be free and expansive and connected and loving. It's going to be retracted. It's going to be small, and I'm going to play small. I'm going to reserve myself. I'm going to hide. I'm going to, like, stay small. But if I see that the world is supporting me, it's a good universe, it's a good place to be, then I'm expecting that people are ready to be to be in connection. I'm expecting to receive love. I'm expecting to open up to abundance and gifts and all these beautiful miracles, right? So it's like to impact, to create impact. It means, in my opinion, legacy. It means like really being a contribution, serving people, and not quantity, but depth. How deep can we go with one person's life? You know, like I know we were talking about like launching a podcast, the possibilities that open up because of that, it's like so enormous, right? You're one person, like in any person who I work with, when I give them those tools to create the platform, like just one person who I'm serving, they go out and create such a massive freaking ripple effect, man. But that can only happen because my energy is available for people to serve. And I see this world and this universe as a great universe, man.
I'm with you. And I think that matters. And I would say there's one other thing that I learned is that it's a very difficult thing to find out what somebody else's kind of core worldview is, because they might say one thing out loud, but then, over time, the mental and emotional state that they're in when it comes to the way they look at the world, it might not be it might not be aligned with what they're saying. And if you partner with people where your kind of core worldview isn't aligned, that's one thing I've learned, is just like, it's so important to me now to realize that values and worldview and then values alignment, at least on the core big ones, is so important. If you want to achieve something that matters, that you feel good about, then you got to make sure that the people you spend most of your time with are aligned with you in those core values.
Yeah. No. So that worldview has become a critical part of you and being able to relate to people and to be able to achieve your impact in people's lives. Like it's something that you're focused on, something that you're present to. Tell us a little bit more about how you're integrating that with yourself, with your clients, and sharing this message out in the world.
Yeah. I think what I've become really fascinated with is deconstructing the human experience in general. And we seem to, for some reason, kind of really separate business from human experience. And I don't understand why we want to do this, because all business exists because of the way we are.
Yeah.
So humans are afraid. We have certain needs. There's all kinds of things that the way we behave and why we do what we do is why businesses work the way they work. So the whole world works the way it works because of the way we are. And so I think the more time we can individually spend, or the more commitment we have to understanding ourselves and other people, we will just kind of by nature start to understand the way the world works a lot better, under the surface, the way it works. And so integrating, and I don't know if I have to integrate it. It's more like just saying, like, everything is integrated, and if we want to understand it better and make some difference to it, we need to understand why it's that way. And some of the things I talk about a good bit are being in business, being an entrepreneur. Like, that's a human experience too. You can't take the human out of it. And most of the reasons that we fail in what we want to achieve is really in here, right? Yeah. I think emotions cause more failure than anything else. It's not because you ran out of capital. It's because you probably had too much emotional attachment to a direction and you weren't pivoting to the people, or you didn't go out and want to hear the truth or something. But so I really enjoy helping people kind of discover things about themselves and give them external perspective, and coaching entrepreneurs. So that's why we're doing what we're doing for the long term. Being able to, I know that it's probably much more, the impact I can have is much more, like you said, ripple effect. It's much more exponential if I can find those people. The more of those people that I find who really do have that, either they already kind of have that worldview and that interest and that fire that they want to find a way to make more impact, and already thinking from a giving perspective, like you're saying, not just. Then the more I help those people, the more ripple effect there will be, because I can't change the world so dramatically on my own, right?
Right. Yeah. Takes a team, takes like really a community. And I love the big corporations like Apple, like bless the possibilities that they have created in the world, and that technology and that art and that design and thinking. It's like, it's amazing. And I know we were talking about like Tom Bilyeu and how awesome he is and what he's created with impact theory, and just everyone who's creating these massive movements and communities of people who think the way that they think, and then creating dialogue and creating conversations between each other so that the people of like mind can join together and support each other and encourage each other. It's like one of the greatest things that has ever happened,
I so agree. I really do. I don't have science to back this up, but I heard this theory and I really like it. So, something like these numbers makes sense to me. Somebody told me that they read or they heard somewhere that roughly 7% of the human population right now are actively working toward something that helps humanity or helps the world. Yeah. And if we could just move that to 10%, that would be the tipping point that makes all the difference, right? And when I look at what one human can do, you're bringing up some examples of that. But look at Elon Musk. I'm not sure he's the most personal development focused guy in the world, but he's shown us what one human can do, and that's amazing, right? We have so much power to affect the world now, and you're right, it's through technology, and that's kind of why we don't look at software. I mean, my partner loves building software, kind of more on the geeky side than me, right? But because he just loves building software, he loves teaching something that can't think to think. I look at any technology as a tool. And we have just leveraged tools now, like you're saying, that can, that allow us to have this potential for a smaller number of people to make a much bigger difference. And that's why we do what we do. We see it as, so if I can help a lot of people on the human side of things through helping them upgrade their perspective and take more ownership of their own growth, and then on the technology side of things, I love what you just said about Apple, because we look at companies like that, we just think this behemoth that's just making technology. We could focus on all the potential negative side effects of those things, but man, you're right. I mean, how many people are building podcasts off of a phone? It's amazing.
Man. So good. So good. So Eli, I want to shift gears, so to speak, in terms of the foundational stuff that you love to talk about with business owners, with founders and startups. What are some things that you really love to make sure are in place? You love to make sure that they're doing correctly at the beginning.
At the beginning of a startup, I love to see openness in the founders, that they, you need energy, right? You need, I think it's really key to have a person who is the champion. You need that person. I've just never really seen a business succeed when you didn't have that energy driver, right? So you need that champion. You need that person who's just going to kind of he's the one that makes sure, or she's the one that makes sure that every next meeting is scheduled, and somebody's got to be driving it. But beyond that, I love to see openness to what you don't know. Just realizing that there's this huge world out there that you don't know, and that's fine. You'll figure it out. So openness that we don't know, and willingness to do the work to find out. A mindset of, I can figure it out. We can figure this out. Like over the years of doing business in a lot of different fields, I see things so differently now, where we see that this need is there, and we would like to solve it, and we have some general ideas that we're pretty excited about that we think will work to solve it, but we could be completely wrong, and that's completely fine, because every stage of iteration we're going to learn something new, and then that's okay. And like being comfortable with that process is something that experienced entrepreneurs have. A lot of times inexperienced entrepreneurs are really married to this, they got excited about
the idea, getting right.
Is the solution, and that's a kind of a bad sign. So those are some things I love to see. Need in your founding team, you need some emotional stability. You need some people that have already kind of built themselves into relatively, we all have ups and downs. We all have bad days, but you can't build a business successfully if you're going to check out for weeks at a time. So there needs to be that consistency, and I guess those are a few things that I look for. If you have those, if you're open to feedback, and you don't have an ego involved, then you can achieve virtually anything. So
Mm.
experience is important, but nowhere near as important as those foundational things.
Mm. Yeah. And, it's interesting because I think a lot of people start something because they want to make an impact. They want to, serve, they want to contribute. And also for me, I know like I wanted to be the person who claimed that, who like won, who like, yes, I freaking did it, and in the process make a massive contribution. So I think it's a dance of the ego, so to speak, of like, hey, I'm freaking going for it. The conviction, the champion, like that I think there's a positive ego in that drives things. And then also the other side of like not being too stubborn or too closed-minded, saying, no, this is the way it is. We're going for it. And being open to receive that coaching and the feedback. And then at the end of the day, listening back into the intuition and like learning how to trust ourselves. And there's going to be mistakes that we make. There's going to be victories that we achieve. And it's all part of the growth and the learning of who we are and how do we see the world? How do we operate and create impact?
Yeah, that's a very interesting thing. I've been thinking a good bit over the last few years about this core, motivation that a lot of entrepreneurs have from the very beginning.
Yeah.
Obviously, a lot of people want out from under a boss. They don't want to be. They want to own their own time. They want freedom. But there is this core driver that you just mentioned, which is like, I want this to be mine. I want this to be my idea, and I want the world to know that it was me, right? Because actually, we have to solve this for the model that we're building, because we want to be able to hire people who've been, let's say, in one of the big consulting firms for 10 or 15 years, and they have a lot of experience. They know kind of the way the world works, and they really built themselves into professionals, but they've never been entrepreneurs before. And for them to exit the corporate world and become an entrepreneur for the first time, the odds are high that they will fail because of a lot of reasons. If we could hire that person at the same salary, maybe even more, and put them into an environment where they get to spend a lot of their time learning the things somebody showing them, like, here are the sides of you and other people, and like personal development and leadership, etc., that you might not know yet, and we want to coach you.
Yeah.
And then inside that same company, we decide, here are the problems we want to solve. We want to reclaim the deserts, whatever it is, right? And here's the technology we're going to use. And then we test it out, we prove it. Like, okay, we've got a model here that we think is doable. MVP's already built. All right, we need 3 founders. All right, we think you guys are ready. You want to do it? You like this idea enough? Are you passionate enough about this idea? Maybe they were the ones that actually helped us come up with the idea in the first place. And now we assign them, we, as the whole brain trust, everybody assigns them. We agree, these 3 guys are these 3 people, these are the most ready to start this business. Okay, so now they start the business. They have access. They don't have to go raise capital. They have mentors. They have coaches. They have a whole back office support network of software developers and customer service, etc. So the whole thing is there for them, right? The odds of success are, it's arguable, but I think they're a lot higher than if you do it alone.
Yeah.
However, there would be a lot less of this "I did it alone" thing, right? And so we kind of have to solve that a little bit. I've let go of a lot of that in my life, but I am fascinated by this thing you just brought up, is that there can be certainly a positive outcome to having that drive that started with ego. Right. So we have to see if we can get people to be as invested as in that model that I just described as they would have been if they started alone.
Wow. Yeah. And I found that just like simply celebrating the sources of growth in our life, whether it's coaches, whether it's books, whether it's whatever, and mentioning about those things on our, whatever day-to-day life, and sharing those with people and saying, this really made a difference for me. I think that like that's a first step of that process. And then to take it to a whole new level, I think the leadership, what I've learned is to give credit to like your team, to give credit to people all around you for your success, rather than saying I did it alone. I think that I did it alone mindset is very is like the bad side of the ego, the prideful bad. I mean, if we were to label it, but it's the side that is unconscious. It's the side from the 80s and 90s that was, trying to to validate itself through achievement. And now we're in a phase where it's like, come on, you can't even be serious if you think that you did this alone. Like it took like heaven and earth and moving it and all the people and communities to actually make a significant impact, a significant, profit, millions, tens of millions of dollars. That's like, no way one person is responsible. And that one person can be the driver, like, hey, I'm in charge of my life. And I think that's the first thing to recognize, but then also to give credit.
Totally. Well said. I just recently read a book by A New Earth by Eckhart Tolle.
Yes.
Kind of have a new perspective on that word ego.
Mm.
That's why I lean towards saying overall, I don't think it's the ideal way to go about it. And
Right.
I don't think it's also like what you said, like nobody really does it on their own, not if they're successful, right? No way. And I'm also reading a really interesting book right now by Keith Ferrazzi. So he read Never Eat Alone about building a network. Yep. Now he wrote this book. Oh man, I'll have to post it in the notes later. It just escaped my mind. But it's all about having this circle of people around you that you just have this incredibly close support network that will tell you the truth about you and that will just support you no matter what. And man, totally forgot the name of the book, but yeah, I really like it, and I think it's something I want to focus on more. Is just helping other people go out of advisors that they know why they chose those people, because man, come on, you can't do it alone. And we can learn a lot from the internet. We can learn a lot from YouTube, but it's so much nicer if you have accountability and sometimes people that slap you in the face and say, you are acting like an asshole.
Yeah, and it's like listening to a source, listening to a podcast, YouTube, whatever. It's very one way. It's more conversational than, let's say, like, I don't know, reading or something like that. It's like more personal, but it's still not, hey, who are you? What's important to you? What are your values? Where are you at? What's your next steps? Like, let's get real. It's very, here's the blueprint. Here's the cookie cutter. Here's what worked for me. Go through it. May not be exactly what you need, but go through it, and so I think it's just fun, all the resources and information that's available, and being able to customize it and direct it. That's why I really love what you're doing, Eli, because you're creating an ecosystem of, wherever these founders are at, whatever their vision is, you're going to give them whatever those next steps are, and like give them a process, an evolutionary process, a curriculum to help them do that. And I think that's cool.
Thank you. I just opened my Kindle and it's called Who's Got Your Back.
Who's Got Your Back?
I'm not that far through it yet, but I really like it so far.
I love it. Okay, so I wanted to ask you about the future. I know that was a big part of our conversation pre-interview call. What do you see in the future? How do you see technology shaping the future? What is important for you about the future?
Yeah, man, that's an awesome question. We've got so much. We got so many big questions about that. One thing that I'm fascinated by is the upcoming decades when it comes to our knowledge about just human health, because human longevity. When I look at people like Naveen Jain and Peter Diamandis and people that are putting their billions of dollars and their experience and networks and authority, there's the word, into businesses that are pulling together all the knowledge about like our brains and DNA and just the way that we age, et cetera, are just, it's kind of like what happened 15, 20 years ago with cell phones, and how we went from flip phones to what we've got now in a very short period of time. Whereas the decades had gone by with very little noticeable improvement. When everybody starts piling everybody starts kind of stacking on top of knowledge, and more researchers are putting energy and money into a technology. So I think we're going to see some incredibly big changes in what's possible for the quality of life we've got and the length. And that's exciting to me, because when I think about my life so far, I'm 42. Of course, I've had experiences all along the way that were teaching me things, but I don't think I was very intentionally building who I am until the last maybe 6, 7 years, especially 5. And just how much I've changed myself over the past couple of years with that work and that setting about with that intention, man, where can my brain be in another 20 or 30 years, and how much can that help the world if my brain doesn't slow down but keeps speeding up? And that to me is exciting. And if it's not me, it's not me, but there will be people whose brains just keep going, you know, and we've got this problem where we're losing the best brains because they start declining and then they're gone. And so that's going to change a lot, I think, just fundamentally, right? AI is another fascinating conversation. I won't jump into it too much. There's a pretty interesting book called AI Superpowers that I think is interesting perspective on where we're at with that. We're going to see a lot of big changes, and I think it's going to be exciting for the people who see it as exciting, and it's going to be scary for the people who are afraid of it. But
what's the worldview you're choosing?
we're gonna, you know, a lot of humans are going to have to change the way they look at things because what we thought was valuable, you know, and the ability to do a job that somebody can tell you how to do, it's not going to be valuable anymore. So yeah, the future shows us, you know, as long as humans are here and the world is built around us, which hopefully we have this, you know, built-in desire for that to continue, then if that continues, there will not ever be a decline in value when it comes to knowing humans. So I think human skills, like the more you can understand yourself and other people, you'll just be able to help other people live better. And I hope that we continue to see a big growth in that area for people to just focus in, like understanding humans is key.
Yeah, I love it. I want to talk about your move from the United States to the Philippines and how that is playing into your vision of the future, especially. Why is that a great place for you, and the combination of what's possible in the future?
First, I'll start by saying that, you know, for those of you who might hear this who live, let's say, in the U.S., and it's a great place to live. It's comfortable. It's easy to not really pay attention to the rest of the world because for some reason we don't get that much input. We haven't chosen to pay any attention to it in our media, etc. Make it a priority to spend some time in another place because you probably can. You might think you can't, but you probably can. I don't know you, so I'm not going to say you absolutely can, but I bet you absolutely can. Going to another place, living in another culture, just forces your brain to challenge so many things that you thought were true, and it sort of you start bumping up against all these beliefs you didn't know were there in your own head, and it just changes you. So it doesn't necessarily, you know, I'm not going to say that it's specifically the Philippines that I needed to go to, but I'm so glad that we have spent this much time living in another place, and I want to do that again. Like I really want to get, because I know the perspective I have on the world now is so much more comprehensive, but how much am I still not seeing? Because I've never lived in Brazil, I've never lived in Russia. Like, I mean, there's so many other human, you know, just cultures, et cetera, that I don't understand yet. So that's first of all. But Philippines, I like living here because it shows me it keeps me very aware of the big gap in where people are in their, it's not just their living environments, but the way they see the world. And so there's a lot of wealth disparity here, but it's not really about the wealth disparity as much for me as it is about the mindset disparity. You know, there's just a lot of, I see Chinese business people here that are really unhappy but super wealthy, and I see the way they think. I see people who clean their houses and I see the way they think. And I see foreigners here. We do a lot of international business with Australia, with the UK. So I just love the perspective that I get being an expat in another place. And yeah. And the changes that are happening in a not third world, I hate it when I say that, in a developing nation. It's fun to watch. It reminds me of what I know the U.S. went through in the past and kind of where we ended up. And I would love to be part of conversations that help maybe a different outcome, I hope.
Do you feel like the United States has more than enough people who are like leading the charge. There's more than enough momentum, and you wanted to bring that momentum to other places and like be a catalyst and ignite that.
I won't say that I had that vision when I came here, but now I look at it that way. I think I kind of just had this feeling I can make more of a difference here, but I had no real idea how. And I won't lie to you and say that I was super focused on impact when I came here. It's not really true. I was focused on experiences, and I prioritized experiences for several years because I wanted to grow myself, and I deprioritized, like I really did. I just said, you know what, I don't really care about what I could be earning in a job. I want experience, and when I mean experience, not work experience. I want like world. But now the way I look at it, I'm glad you asked that question because I did want to mention this. You know, in the U.S., there are a lot of great conversations happening that I see. I see, like you mentioned, impact theory. That's been a major, it's like a super nexus for me, of a place that I've just chose that. And Tom Bilyeu's interviews led me to so many thought leaders, and I read I found the ones who I wanted to think more like, and I read their books, and like it's just upgraded my own brain. I have a challenge with that with people here because when I introduce them to the same resources, they have a lot of people in countries where they don't have as much freedom and they feel a lot more maybe oppressed by their economic situation. They tell themselves that, yeah, but it's different for those people. So maybe they understand it, but they can't quite relate and they can't quite believe that they have the same opportunity to build, to get themselves to that place. And so I really do have this kind of passion project that I'm working on plans for, I hope later this year, maybe early next year, to start a podcast that's for people here, to help them kind of be a bridge, to be able to tell stories of people who came from very, very, very difficult backgrounds, who can articulate why those struggles made them who they are now, and that people here would be able to say, okay, yeah, I don't have it that bad, which means I can do it. And that's a kind of a mental bridge to lots of the conversations that are already out there. I don't need to reinvent what you're doing, but I do think that if it was here and it was stories from here, then that kind of dispels the myth and shatters the story.
Yeah, it's like you want to create accessibility, not celebrities, but it really is. It's like local celebrities. You want to create local celebrities so that people locally say, if this person can come from poverty and, a developing country and everything against him, and then or her, and then develop into their greatest possible self and be traveling the world and freedom and money and happiness, fulfillment, then it's possible for me. It's those stories have been, just totally circulated in a great way, an empowering way around the United States. And not every place in the world has that access, has that like, oh yeah, it's another Les Brown. Oh yeah, it's another Jim Rohn. Oh yeah, it's another Tony Robbins. It's like, it's not like that in a lot of places.
Yeah, you could use the word authority there. I think it's because of the people who that you can relate with, that came from a place that you can imagine. You know what that looks like. You know what that feels like. You've got friends who have the same story. It becomes much more of an authority to your mind to say, yeah, okay, I really can. I can. Actually, it was an impact theory episode maybe a year and a half ago that I heard, which was Jessica Matthews, and she was saying, she got $7 million in venture capital. I hope I'm getting this right. And she said, I moved my company to Harlem instead of Silicon Valley, specifically because I want girls who look like me to know they can be somebody other than Beyonce. Man, I hope I got that quote right. But yeah, that was what hit me. I'm like, I've never seen a Filipino on any of these interviews that I've ever, that I'm following. Right. So somebody's got to tell these stories. And so yeah, I'm looking forward to that. I hope that will make a difference for a lot of people.
Yeah, amen, man. Tell us more about personal growth. What has been a big shift for you because of personal growth? I know we kind of talked about it a couple years ago. I asked you earlier, when did it start becoming important for you? But what have you seen as far as yourself in terms of personal growth from doing the studying, from listening to podcasts, being coached, going to seminars, different things like that? What have you seen in terms of your shifts in raising consciousness?
I can't think of a part of life that hasn't gotten better from asking better questions. And like I said, the first question that I started asking 10 years ago was who actually am I becoming? Am I happy with that? And am I creating that? Like, have I chosen the next version of me? And I don't think I was asking the questions very well back then, but at least I got started. And I've been maybe 4 or 5 years ago was the first time I really, really intentionally said, I'm going to reinvent myself this year. I'm going to be this guy. I printed out a business card with stuff on it that I'd never done before. And I ended up doing that stuff. Like I made myself that person. And that's a weird thought for people because it seems kind of fake. But no, you can do it. You can rewire yourself. You just have to decide, like, if that's who I want to be, what do I need to know? And, how do I need to rewire my brain? There's just been so many discoveries about what's possible there that have changed the way I look at life. Mindset by Carol Dweck was a huge, just fundamental, perspective change on how rewirable we really are, and how many times I was looking at myself and other people in a fixed mindset, like, that guy's not that smart, like we're just saying things to ourselves that are quite fixed, and that changed a lot for me. Man, relationships, ability to look at hard things. Lexia was just talking about this on the last interview I heard. She was talking about leaning into the difficult things. That's where the magic is in life. Ryan Holiday's book I read about 2 years ago when I was going through a pretty difficult time. The obstacle is the way. Mm-hmm. Man, I love that book. Just like realizing that every time something feels scary, every time something looks like a bad, difficult situation, that there's so much opportunity. The sooner you lean into that and you do the work, even though you're scared of it, the sooner you lean in and do the work, the sooner you experience the magic on the other side of how good you feel about yourself, that, hey, that wasn't that big of a deal. I can solve that. I can deal with that next time. I can go through that pain and figure it out. Relationships, difficult conversations, like they just start getting easier. So I really do think that it's important that we look at life, like the human experience, be curious about deconstructing it, be curious about learning it, but really ask yourself, is it reasonable that there's a mountaintop that I'm going to reach? Because I think somewhere subconsciously we've got this idea that there's this thing we're trying to get to in the future, and we don't end up really living now. And that's something I'm really working on this year. Like, how much do I enjoy every moment? How much do I enjoy every day? What kind of energy am I bringing to people around me by being here? Because there's no mountaintop to reach, right? It literally is the journey. Right. That's the only thing you can ever experience. So progress, it makes us happier, but it's eternal progress. Like there's no the pursuit of mastery, yes, recognizing you will never actually master anything. Yep, is kind of key for me.
Personal, it's interesting. Personal growth is like, who could I become? What is the best version of myself? I don't know if we talked about this in our pre-interview call, but Matthew McConaughey talked about that 10-year version of himself that he was always wanting to catch up to. He did I think it's like a speech, Grammys, or some movie award speech, and he said he doesn't look to other successful people or anything like that for inspiration or for who he wants to become. He looks to the version of himself 10 years from now who has achieved all the things that he wants to achieve, and who that person is for, like, who I get to wake up and chase that person, chase that, how they show up, how they think, how they look at the world, how they serve others in every day, to do that. And there will always be a person 10 years from now who's different, who's, completely different. I also love what you said about, just in terms of like the last 10 years, 20s was a certain decade for you, 30s was a certain decade for you. In the next 10 years, the next 20 years, what's possible with this level of growth, with this level of commitment, with this level of new awareness of how do you grow, how do you apply yourself, how do you choose who you become versus kind of just being on a hamster wheel. I think it's awesome.
Yeah, it's a long-term project to grow yourself and improve yourself, and so many different pieces of life that we have to work on, but we got to do it one at a time. And some of the little habits that I've built, I really owe like the gratitude to my partner, who's my business partner. He's in his mid-20s, but he's taught me more about developing yourself than anybody I've ever met. And he taught me these little simple things, like the way that the brain actually rewires itself when we do things over and over again, and just simple concepts like Darren Hardy compound effect, just starting with simple changes. Yeah. it's the consistency over time that changes you. We misunderstand this. And, I made some improvements to my health habits over the last 2 years, but it's been gradual. It's just been sustainable things that I could keep up. I'm tracking them. And then after 2 years, people are like, man, you really look like you lost weight. You look like you're working out. I'm like, just a little bit most day. And I've been doing it for 2 years and now you see it, I think everything has to be installed that way if we want to improve ourselves, because it's got to become part of you. And until you've done it consistently long enough that it becomes part of you, like my reading habit now, I think I've got it to the point where every day I read 10 to 15% of a book, and that adds up to 50 books, and that freaking changes you, right? But you got to start with probably just one page a day. Don't try to do that. You got to start with something you can actually keep going.
Yeah. That's beautiful. What role has your family played in you becoming your greatest possible self?
That's a really good question. I feel a little, I'll take the word family as two components. I've got my family I brought with me, which is my wife and 2 kids. And then I've got my big family in the US that I honestly have sort of abandoned, to be honest. And I think there was a big advantage to disconnecting from all of the people that I grew up with, because then it made it easier to change into who I wanted to be.
Create a new identity.
I could really say, like, there's no more fear of other people's opinions. There's no more, I can kind of like really separate from what everybody else expects me to be and their memory of who I was. That gives you some freedom. I think it's harder if you're around people that have known you your whole life. With my immediate family, with my wife and kids, as I started being happier and happier with who I was becoming, joined Toastmasters. You said you were in Toastmasters, right? Like that made me feel in a very short period of time, like way better about myself and my communication ability. It really increases your confidence. I noticed at first that I felt like a little frustrated that my wife and my kids maybe weren't, especially my wife at the time, my kids were pretty young. She wasn't really doing the same work on herself yet. And kind of a long story, but I realized after a while that I couldn't have a picture in my mind of who I wanted her to be, because then I would treat her in a way that she might start feeling. I think for a long time, she probably felt like I didn't approve of her enough. And that's not empowering. That doesn't help people grow. So what I realized is, like, I've got to just accept people for who they are, recognize every individual has to choose for themselves who they want to become. And I hope that by me supporting them in whoever they decide to become, and by being an example of somebody who's always growing and improving and challenging themselves, that they would decide to follow suit. And my wife has done a lot of those things. She's really, once I kind of let go of what I expected her to, she's really grown a lot. She became president. She joined Toastmasters, became president the next year, and like she's changed so much in the last few years. And last thing I'll say on that is my kids, I've let go of any expectation of who I want them to become. Got to decide. And I just hope that they see having parents that are growing themselves and working on themselves. I hope they just learn the value of that. So that's the way I see that.
Awesome. I love it. Eli, this is gold, man. I want to tell our audience and anyone who's tuning in or watching right now, how can they stay connected with you? What are the next steps they can take, man?
Yeah, I would love to be connected. At this point, I still am pretty able to interact with anybody who's interested to talk about any of these things. I publish articles here and there on LinkedIn and Medium. You can find me on Twitter. It's EQ Learner, because I want to always be learning about emotional intelligence. So it's hashtag EQ Learner. And yeah, probably those places would be great. Feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn and start a conversation anytime.
Awesome. I love it, man. And I want to wrap it up with the final piece of wisdom that you want to give to our audience. We covered a lot of different topics today, but just getting to the core of impact. I know that's the big theme of today. What do you want to drive home about impact, about being our greatest possible selves?
That no matter what you think about what's going on with other people, the challenges that other people, we look at suffering, we look at other people, and we don't want them to suffer. We don't like some things that we see. I think it's key that I got this from Ray Dalio from the book Principles. You really need to get to the place where you can accept things the way they are before you can. I think we can't put full energy into making a difference before we accept. I think you got to start with true acceptance of the way it just is that way. Okay, it just is that way. And then I can't save anybody out of a flood. in the water. I've got to get myself out, right? So you got to start with you. And if you can build yourself into someone that is actually capable of helping other people, then you can start to make a difference. For me, those are the kind of the 3 core steps to start.
Awesome. Eli, you're a champion. Thank you so much for being here. Stoked to be on the journey with you. I know this is like really a fertile, beautiful place that you're at, and like really cherishing each moment, and then also stepping into impact and legacy even more. And the community that you're surrounded by is like so ripe for support. It's just getting the right things in place so that they can grow and see it's possible. And I totally acknowledge you for stepping up to that and stepping into that, to being the catalyst that awakens the tsunami, awakens the ripple effect over there, man. It's awesome.
Thank you for what you're doing, Chris. You're awesome.
Thank you. Appreciate you, Eli, and I'll see you soon, okay?
Love talking to you. See you, man.
Bye.
Cheers.